Thanks, Patrick. Welcome everybody to our conversation about the local and on-demand economy and transactions in particular. This is part of our run-up to the BIA Kelsey Now conference that Patrick just described. That happens on June 12th in San Francisco at the Mission Bay Conference Center, which is on the campus of the University of California, San Francisco. And what we're going to be talking about today with our guests, who include David Galvin, who's Vice President of Business Development and Strategic Alliances at MasterCard, as well as Greg Goldfarb, CEO and co-founder of Flint Mobile, a transactions and business services provider. We're going to be talking about how, as on-demand work increasingly accounts for part of the economy, the use of transactions will change, and the use of transaction platforms will be a key to building out greater and greater brand and consumer identification with these services. One of the things to keep in mind about the local on-demand economy as we talk about it is that it's not new. Rather, it's really becoming part of a formal part of the economy. As long ago as 2000, according to the Government Accounting Office in Washington, D.C., as many as 40% of American workers were, in some sense, a contingent worker already. So we've had a combination of part-time and full-time employment developing over the last 30 years that's relatively novel compared to the industrial era, but I think what we're doing is moving beyond it, and that is why we've chosen to focus on the local and on-demand in naming this conference. We want to emphasize the fact that it's a consumer-centric or customer-centric world in which their locality is the milieu or the setting in which you're going to do business. A lot of businesses, particularly national brands, struggle with the notion of national versus local. And what we're seeing happen as a result of a number of converging trends is the driving of corporate data interchange capabilities, which the enterprise has benefited from for the last 30 years, into the small business and local consumer community so that they have a greater range of choices, a lot more need, and a lot more opportunity to customize what they buy for their particular needs and uses. And so that's going to be the subject of the conference on June 12th, and we hope that you'll join us. Use the discount in order to get $100 off. And the event will be, I think, one of the more interesting days that you might spend in the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to try to bring into focus a collection of data and trend information, as well as the perspective of folks like Greg and Dave talking about how the economy is already undergoing this transformation. So I want to start off with Dave Galvin from MasterCard. Can you tell us a little about what you do? And we'll start from there since, of course, this is a conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Mitch. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so I'm part of a new team that was recently put together for MasterCard on the West Coast. It's basically called U.S. Market Development, but in a nutshell, our job is to build strategic relationships with emerging and established digital companies on the West Coast. So, you know, MasterCard's an old line company, mostly predominantly on the East Coast, and we started to realize that we were losing touch with some of these growing digital giants. So we thought we needed to have a team out here to build long-term strategic relationships. So we partner with very, very small companies in the early stages, fintech accelerators. We work with a number of accelerator programs, all the way to very, very large digital giants, so, and everything in between.
Great. And Greg Goldfarb, can you tell us a little about Flint and how you got involved in the serving small businesses with transactions?
Sure. So I'm the CEO and co-founder. I started the company in April 2011, and previously I'd spent about 4 years working on business mobility and really focused on the idea that the personal computer was really becoming the mobile phone and the mobile device. And a lot of that work was with Salesforce.com, where I also learned quite a bit about small business and how it was changing. So Flint, from the very beginning, was all about enabling what we would refer to as really the flexible mode of business. Some people call it on demand, and it's really all about how you can essentially run your business from the palm of your hand from a mobile device. And we sought to solve two problems. One, what's the easiest way to get paid through your phone? And part of that involves getting rid of any sort of external hardware. And two, how can you simplify the ability for small business to engage their customers for more repeat and referral business, which is the lifeblood of many small businesses.
So the solution you have is cool and very different than the slide and swipe versions, and that is that you literally just point your telephone camera at a card, centering the numbers in your reader, and that's the scan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so our view, I think one of the core elements of our differentiation on the product side really stems from a differentiated view as to what customer segment or what problems we were trying to solve. And so we were always most interested and remain most interested in all the business that's happening outside of traditional retail environments. And what that means is they tend to be service-centric businesses, or it can be event-based activity or organizations, local organizations. But we've been very passionate about this idea. The economy is changing. And there has been more and more activity happening in flexible locations. It may mean you're in an office sometimes. It could be you're in someone's home sometimes. It could be in a coffee shop or at an event. But the world, as consumers expect more and more that they can get things where and when they need them, the implications are businesses have had to figure out how to be more flexible. And the steel thread as an enabler is really what you can do through your mobile phone. Because whether you're in an office or at a client's home or in a client's office or out on a playing field, the thing that you have with you is your phone. And so, yeah, we started with the idea that for those kinds of businesses that don't have a countertop and don't have a cash register, the simplicity of all I need is my phone, there's no dongle, and leveraging the camera, just like you do for mobile check deposit or taking digital photos, using that in a secure way would be a good place to start instead of requiring extra hardware.
So you're using both transaction capability and customer engagement or CRM-like capabilities to provide a range of services that the individual or SMB can use to conduct their business anywhere.
Yeah.
Who's the customer these days when you talk about that? We talk about these on-demand workers, and we talk about SMBs almost interchangeably, and I'm beginning to think that we have to get over the sort of bias that says if they're not an entrepreneur, they're not really working hard, and treat everybody as a small business person in this environment. Do you see this becoming a tool that an individual plumber is going to be routinely using and may just replace a storefront with in terms of their ability to get out and do business with people?
Yeah, well, I guess there's a couple questions there. So, on the first, in terms of who the customers are and how it's evolving, it's actually been really interesting to see because you'd be surprised in actually the average ticket size or the average transaction size that we do through Flynn is higher than average for all sorts of other credit card processing, for example. So our average ticket is over $120 through our mobile app for all sorts of users and businesses. And that's reflective of the fact that our customers they do tend to be rendering services of some fashion, and those can be appointment-based, like the typical I call it 60-minute appointment. It could be a project that is a higher dollar amount, or it can be time-based billing for some sort of service. And so the segments that we see that have been most active are in health and beauty services, professional services, which is a range of freelancers to accounting to local attorneys to real estate services, creative services like photographers, videographers, all sorts of curation of local events. And then you have your typical kind of home and building contractors, which is what most people think about when you show them, you can do something for your mobile phone. You typically get, so this is for plumbers and food trucks, but actually the range of users is much, much broader than that. And they tend to be rendering real, very significant activities. They're not, it's not donuts and a burrito or coffee, or 3 coffees. It's I'm doing my physical therapy twice a month.
So people being themselves, doing what they love, and buying
Yeah.
the things that they really value, and doing it between individuals wherever they are, rather than going in the phone book and looking for it and then going and visiting.
Absolutely.
So,
and I would say to your second question, as to whether it's, is it enabling, or are we powering kind of someone's entire business? The answer is absolutely yes. And we know this from recent survey data. So on top of, as we've evolved as a company based on customer requests, where we started was essentially, okay, you can run card payments with no dongle, and we open up data so that you can more easily interact with customers, and you can, for example, say, oh, okay, I just want to send a follow-up email to the people I did 2-hour CrossFit sessions with, and a different one to people I did spinning class. We've always enabled that. But then we've also layered on additional services like the ability to send invoices and get paid online. You can also power your website with a mobile-optimized buy now experience and use your same Flynn account. And then we went deeper on the customer loyalty side by integrating digital couponing with the likes of Apple Passbook and email, and streamlining the whole redemption cycle. And then lastly, by virtue of expanding kind of the capabilities of the platform, so you can have teams of you can actually have up to 100 logins in a managed workflow fashion per Flynn account. We've seen even bigger businesses or organizations that have multiple users, and some of which are rendering what people think of as on-demand services, using Flynn as a way of really running, getting paid, and easily being able to reach back out to some of their customers.
So the foundation of all this is the transaction. It's really the pivot point for, and of course it's an economy, and people are earn money, which is exactly what this is all designed for. Dave Galvin, you and I have talked about the pain points that you see for the companies trying to build these on-demand supply portals, where, for instance, an Uber or a Lyft or a HomeJoy or TaskRabbit has a bunch of people or services aligned, ready to be delivered. And they also need to bring those people who may not even be banked, that is, that they don't have a bank account or a credit card, into these transactions. And you're starting to work on solutions that MasterCard can provide to basically backstop the entire process with that transactional capability. Can you talk a little about where you see MasterCard's primary opportunity in this market being? Is it to expand the small business? Is it to expand the small business and bring more of those individual workers into a small business kind of setting for themselves? Where do you start when you've got the biggest hammer on the block?
Yeah, so great question. So we love the space. Obviously, it's very compelling. What you have are a lot of transactions occurring, relatively small transactions, and generally speaking, for the most part, you have scenarios where 85% of all the top-line revenue in these companies is moving out the back door in the form of other transactions. So from just a pure play, money on the rails business, these businesses are very interesting and very compelling to MasterCard. As we started talking to a lot of folks in the space, what we started to see is a lot of pain points, right? A lot of the workers tend to be underbanked or are not banked at all.
So let's talk about that. What's the difference between an underbanked person and a banked person?
Yeah, so underbanked is basically a person that has sort of the minimum bank account. So generally speaking, they have money that's less than the minimum, so you don't have to pay all the fees. So generally speaking, every transaction that the underbanked makes is cost prohibitive, right? They have really bad relationships with the bank. They distrust the banks, and the banks essentially gouge them for fees, anything from overdraft fees, which get compounded, to monthly fees, to ATM withdrawal fees. So generally speaking, in the U.S., though we certainly have a big portion of the population that is non-banked, which they don't have a bank account at all. Generally speaking, they're underbanked. regardless of the category, what you have is a scenario where tons of potential workers essentially don't meet the minimum requirements for a lot of these companies. One, because they don't have bank accounts, and two, they don't want the job that they're doing to be pushed onto a particular bank account. So maybe you're cleaning a house or driving a car, and for whatever reason you want those funds separate from your family bank account. Maybe you don't want your wife or your husband to see the money. You want to access the money differently. You want to account for it differently. So long story short, lots of opportunities, for folks looking for unique solutions outside of traditional bank accounts.
So, according to the FDIC, there are about 7.7 million people in the United States as of 2013 who are unbanked. What do you think the number of the underbanked is? And that really sounds to me like a large number of the small businesses I know.
Yeah, so it's huge. The number's huge. It could be upwards in 20% of the U.S. population. But more importantly, it's a significant part of the workforce of many of these local on-demand companies, right? And so what you see is a scenario of if you can't hire somebody because they don't have a bank account or they don't want to supply a bank account, which is sort of the minimum price to entry for some of these jobs, you're looking about, potentially a constriction in 25% of their potential workforce, right? And so if you can free up, one of the requirements of not needing a bank account to be a worker, they have access to significantly many more potential employees.
So when you think about what an underbanked person pays and just extra fees, the extra friction that is in the economy now, there's a tremendous savings right there. And a lot of what we're talking about is something we've seen over the course of many years, is the increasing velocity of money. Do you, both of you, anticipate a day, and I know that Flint emphasizes this in its materials, is you get paid in a couple of days. Whereas today when I work on a contract, I will be paid net 30, 45, or sometimes much longer. And it would be great to eliminate the friction at every one of those steps. Greg, how do you see Flint playing into using the CRM and the like to knitting together greater business systems of greater complexity so that business can grow, even that individual small business?
Yeah, well, I think the key is keeping it simple, because most of these types of businesses, when you say CRM, they have no idea what that means, or they don't want to know. And so I think by thinking about it from the point of view of really what do businesses do as consumers, whether that means they know searching online or getting information through search terms or sending simple emails or more and more using things like Apple Passbook. We've taken an approach fundamentally that says to make life easier for the small business to grow, you need to make the experience for their consumers work with what consumers already know and have in their hands. And so that's what you won't see Flint coming out with a mobile wallet anytime soon, or any sort of app that requires consumer download. It's all about leveraging what's already in people's hands, because there's lots and lots of other kinds of apps out there. And in terms of the tools that we provide to businesses, it really, what we've seen is people really look for things that either save them time, make them more money, or make them look good. That are very approachable and easy to use. So, for example, the kinds of tools we're looking at is enabling you to very simply follow up with customers by email and do it in a smart way based on what the customer has purchased.
Right.
Be able to send coupons as just part of an ordinary getting paid process, and send coupons in a way where you don't need to separately track what's going on. We automatically deal with all the workflow and the expiration dates, and the consumer just gets it in their email, and they can store it in their passbook. And the whole redemption cycle is as simple as scanning your customer's phone when they come back. And so we believe in, fundamentally, it's about the business knowing, giving them easy access to what their customers have done in an actionable format, and giving consumers content that they can use as if they're just doing what they do every day.
And Dave, how does MasterCard see using that kind of consumer data to provide greater intelligence to the business about how to conduct its marketing and to do outreach and when to talk to customers as well? Combined with a CRM, some of MasterCard's information would allow you to recognize when a next purchase was approaching. Where does MasterCard begin to offer new services that expand the meaning of the transactional service that you're already so famous for?
Well, so good question. I mean, obviously, over the years we've collected a tremendous amount of purchase data, both at the consumer level and at the merchant level. And what we've done over the last couple of years through a team called advisors in the company is really try to bundle data and solutions that get in the hands of merchants in a way that doesn't sort of violate any of their privacy. So from a merchant perspective, for example, we have an opt-in product, which basically the merchant opts into, and then we can actually sort of tell that merchant a lot of historical data about transactions as not only as they come across the MasterCard rails, but we sort of extrapolate up and can tell him holistically about his business. So we could tell him information about where all his customers are coming from by zip code, heat maps by time of day, his spend of voice from customers in the area, how he compares to other businesses, a lot of valuable information that gives him a holistic picture of the world so he can actually do things like marketing and think about expansion of his business in a way that uses sort of broad-based purchase data that he wouldn't have access to before. So
we just recently completed a paper on what small businesses are looking for in these kinds of marketing services, and we found in particular that when you move from a very small business to a medium-sized business, that's when the company is most challenged to start to do these marketing and business process things that require generally teams, or at least the tools are built for teams, as compared to something made for an individual. And Greg, your point about keeping it simple is, I think, critical to a very great extent. What Uber accomplishes through that app, both speaking to the individual driver and to the consumer and letting them see the same maps and interact with one another through it, is the epitome of a simple interface for coordinating transportation. How does Flint, and maybe you guys are talking with MasterCard, I don't know, how do you guys think about starting to expand the other services that you can put around the marketing information that Dave just described, for instance? And is that the trajectory for a Flint Mobile in this market?
I think that's one of the areas that's interesting. I think it's a complicated question because one of the things we think about quite a bit is there are all these related things that we could do.
Right, and what not to do is important.
At the same time, the real question is what to really stay focused on, where we deliver the most differentiation and the best user experience, and also we believe in building out an ecosystem of partnerships. And so we want to leverage best of breed in some areas or work together and collaborate with best of breed. And stay focused on things that are very, that we believe we have an advantage on in terms of providing really ease of use and simplicity by virtue of linking, either enabling easier transaction or easier use of related data to a transaction. And so, yes, we are looking at a variety of things around expanded loyalty and referral type of programs that are very much near and dear to both our businesses and consumers, for sure. And I think that's some of the kinds of things you'll see. And it comes back to really, what is the shape of how do these small businesses really grow? And the thing you hear over and over is, the number one thing for many of them is, how do I have my customers tell their friends? about their experience, and how do I enable getting more genuine and authentic good reviews on places like Yelp or Thumbtack or other sites like that. And so we're certainly looking at opening up channels like that to a greater degree, and again, packaging it as part of just part of your everyday experience. So it's making it so that it's something that's presented to your customer, your consumers, without the business necessarily having to do a whole bunch of other work or go log in somewhere else.
So the ratings and reviews, I think, are the other critical transaction that transpires in every one of these local on-demand experiences, and it's the quality as expressed by the consumer, and it's even in the case of the worker, sometimes they'll say, that's a terrible.
Very diverse, and so they're any number. There's a very broad set of communities that they're part of, and so the way we view it is really providing an open template or a set of communications capabilities where they can configure where they're asking to get reviews on, or what sites. And so that's one that we've always thought about our receipts and various invoice notices and coupon notices as these are interesting engagement opportunities that many of these types of users haven't had before, where you can almost automatically have very contextual communications to your customers, and one of the things that you can ask for is, hey, if you had a good experience, would you mind leaving me a review? And I think what we've heard and seen is some businesses that there's an awkward, if you're in front of someone or you're in person, sometimes asking explicitly for a review has a little bit of social awkwardness.
Yeah.
But if it's almost like a digital convenience as part of something that someone's looking at anyway, it breaks down some of those barriers. And so those are the kinds of, we're trying to open up those types of channels by providing flexible formats.
And so integration is obviously going to be one of the keystones for anybody competing in this space, figuring out who to work with and how to talk to their services rather than trying to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
And Dave, what would you say about the opportunity for ratings and reviews, especially using potentially just transactional data as an additional numeric source of confirmation of the qualitative reviews that people are posting? If I have a repeat customer and they never review me, I can still benefit from saying I have a repeat customer.
Yeah. So for the most part, I would say that MasterCard doesn't necessarily think too much about aggregating ratings and reviews, especially for consumer type solutions. We have a pretty small customer base. We really like to see about providing our data to folks that are building unique solutions, because it's monstrous, right? I mean, at the end of the day, with every swipe, we actually collect something like 600 data points, right? And it's just a massive amount of data, both on the consumer and merchant level, and we're really not in, as a small company, we're not in a position to be able to package solutions up for consumers. We love having partners do it, and so part of the stuff that I'm looking for, how can partners take our data and build solutions on top of it that are action oriented? Because honestly, you give an SMB access to 600 data elements, he's not going to know what to do with it, right? And so you need somebody who could, to Greg's point, package it up in a very simple, actionable way, and then have a way to show them results down the road. And so my job is to take very, very complex, detailed, voluminous amounts of information, get it in the hands of people that are building unique solutions, and then having those folks, introduce those solutions either to consumers or to SMBs.
So the application programming interface is the castle wall that you need to get over.
That's right. That's right. And that's sort of how I took a look at local on demand. Again, these companies are really challenging in that they have a lot of very, very difficult challenges, and so we brought a couple of partners together and offered a complex level of solutions that include prepaid cards, disbursement programs, all different kinds of ways for them to move money to a variety of banked or underbanked workers, have them monitor that money, create revenue streams, and again, it was all done through a series of partnerships. We just simply work better that way.
Well, it seems to me that the local on-demand economy is going to emerge out of partnerships. It's going to, between vendors and the customers, the SMBs and these individual workers who will be attempting to sell their services through these marketplaces. And on the other hand, with various companies looking at how to improve the quality of guidance and service that you deliver to those SMBs as customers themselves. So, Greg, I would ask, and I think the answer is pretty obvious, your customer is the small business. Would you agree that that's the case? And how do you help them make their customer happy? There's a two-step dance here.
Yeah, it's hard. It's always hard to vouch for making someone else happy, I suppose. But
nice dance.
Yeah, no, but
do you see?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, so our customer is small business, and that is a very broad term at the same time. So that, in our world, that can mean literally, it can mean everything from a company that has 50 employees to someone who's just starting a business to someone who's doing a combination of, they may be doing some driving for Uber, and they may be selling Herbalife on the side as well. And so what do you call that activity? And it also can be things like charity, nonprofits and charities that are running all sorts of events and activities. So I think the term small business is one. When someone says, "Oh, it's SMB," as if like SMB is a vertical, is one of the biggest, I think, misnomers out there. So I think
yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if that answers your question per se, but that our customer base is, our role in the market is to make things easier than they ever have been, to power growth in what I would say the upstarts of the economy in the U.S. And so as a result of that, we do see a very colorful range of types of small business, quote unquote. So that's on the one hand. As far as our model is, it's a pure software, it's a pure app-based model, entirely self-serve. Although we do have a range of channel partners as well, and some of them certainly are consultative in terms of helping businesses to understand the solution. But by and large, the way in which we educate customers is through kind of easy discovery of capabilities and case studies in some cases, overview videos in some cases, but it's essentially a self-serve model. And we work hard to provide a series of kind of tips and tricks types of content as someone gets up and running with the solution. And then as we see certain types of activity, we shift gears and provide more content, more contextual information depending on kind of what that particular user life cycle looks like.
So your channel partner or reseller could build their business on the consultative part of working with that person to build their business to that 50 employee threshold.
Yeah. I think in some cases today, and this is also a rapidly evolving picture, but to date, I would say our channel partners have by and large fit into one of two camps. They've either been merchant service providers or ISOs that have been in the business of providing merchant services and credit card processing to small and medium-sized businesses, and they're looking for innovation and simplicity around mobility. And so Flynn has become part of the portfolio of a good number of those. And then through our partnership with Intuit, where we integrated with QuickBooks Online, we also have some folks who are more in the pro advisor category, who are more small business consultants, who are really about, they're organizing and helping set up solutions for small businesses.
So at MasterCard, Dave, we've talked about the importance of differentiation, and Greg just used the example of the Uber driver who might be selling nutrients on the side, and I would hate to see that actually happen concurrently. And Dave and I were joking about me watching the Tour de France in my car while I drive earlier, so it's not like I'm innocent here. But is one of the things that the transaction system can do is keep a clear focus on who's delivering value. And the differentiation and brand aspect of that for something like Uber is going to be critical to their continued asset value. The fact people are going to want to come back and that they expect a certain kind of experience. By using an affiliate or a loyalty card to engage the contractor, Dave, do you think that there's a way to work around some of the fuzzy aspects of what branding might look like when you only have part-time or contract employees rather than full-time employees who carry all the costs that they do?
Sure. I mean, I think that we've talked to a number of folks, not just in the local on-demand space, but folks like in the SMB loan space, which is becoming a very, very hot area as well. And so branding is a big concern. How their brands get propagated and differentiated. Home services, for example, is an area where a lot of folks are tackling it from a lot of different ways. And so how do you create brand equity with not only the folks that they're doing business with, but folks that they're doing business with, whether they're contractors or vendors or whatever. So being able to, one, provide branded products, two, being able to track where the money is spent at a master level, which is also very, very important. And then, restrict of where the money is spent. You only want, money that is loaned for a home project to be spent on a variety of home-centric vendors, for example. And then finally, the last leg of the mile is being able to go out and build strategic loyalty partnerships where, you may decide that Home Depot is going to be your exclusive vendor for construction products, and if you go there and use it, you can get, a 5% rebate, which will automatically be pushed to the card, and that's something that we can do as well. So yeah, I mean, I think taking a transaction product, especially a disparate transaction product for a workforce like that, and creating a lot of value on it is something not only we're very interested in doing, but our partners are interested in doing as well.
Well, we're just about at the time that we designated as the end of the session. If anybody has any additional questions, I'd love to get them now. Greg, what would you like to wrap up with after our conversation this morning?
Yeah, well, I think just to tie off on that last point about how you manage brand in these environments, one of the things that we've seen as we've done things like roll out support for team accounts, where let's say if you've got 50 or you've got a significant group of people doing things, one of the realities is what is important is building these kind of capabilities so you also have the notion of permissions and workflow, so that there is a level of control for the organizer or the manager or the owner who can say, hey, I'm going to be the one who sets up what our receipts look like. I'm going to control who can do refunds, and I'm going to figure out what the coupons look like. And so it is, on the one hand, I think there's a key balance here between keeping things flexible and open and easy, but also at the end of the day, the person who's running the show, you want them to feel like they've got they've got control as to how the organization, how the business is presented to the consumer. That is definitely important.
So establishing and standardizing your processes.
Yeah, and making it, and the key again is making it super easy, even though behind the scenes it can be very complicated workflow and permissions and business rules, but at the end of the day it surfaces as what feels and looks much like a consumer app, even when you're doing those kinds of things. That's a really, I think, important principle and challenging to simplify what's complex always. I would say, the other thing is, I would say, and you touched on it relative to integration, and one of the things that we're we are seeing and very much looking forward to is opportunity to integrate with all sorts of business app providers. And so we are in the process of opening up the Flint platform as well. And one of the things that we've seen is there are more and more mobile apps that many of which stem from web applications that are for businesses, and more as those have transitioned to mobile apps, they intersect more and more where people need to get paid and where they want to re-engage customers. And so that's something that we're excited about in terms of building out, helping to build out this market and the capabilities.
So that brings back one additional layer of complexity that I like to ask about, and I'll finish with Dave with this. These networks of services, as they start to coalesce over the next few years, are also going to be looking for complementary services. So, we talked earlier about buying construction equipment at Home Depot, for instance, and that being an automatic discount. But you may find Uber drivers who need somebody to drive their kids on shuttle, and there may be a discount established between the two companies. And I think one of the ways that we're going to create a really large and vibrant local experience of this is that these networks will create locally focused services that are targeted at the customer who is a small business person or on-demand worker, and starting to offer potentially even non-transactional exchanges of value. So is there an opportunity for MasterCard as the mover of money also to move reputation, and maybe we should just call them IOUs, for various kinds of services that an on-demand worker could start to tap into at a lower cost than they would even offer it to the end customer?
Sure. I think generally speaking, we're the collector of the rails, right? And so obviously we make money when things move across rails. That being said, we can't put our heads in the sand and not be cognitive of unique types of currencies. Bitcoin's a perfect example where we don't make money on Bitcoin transactions, but it's incredibly important to us to see where it goes, and so we've got a team that looks at Bitcoin. So absolutely, as new currencies are being created and new forms of revenue streams are created outside of the rails, then we have to look to participate. And part of my job, is how MasterCard evolves over the next 20 years, so we don't have to be so reliant on a transaction swipe to drive revenue, which is why we're creating all these strategic partnerships and looking at all these unique ways of monetizing MasterCard assets.
So on that, I think that's a great place to conclude this. Transactions are going to continue to evolve. It's obvious. Yeah. It needs to stay simple. Integration will be key. People thinking about a new business in this space should be looking to address the small business or on-demand worker and help them satisfy their customers as easily as possible. So that's a lot of great basic conclusions for 45 minutes together. I thank you very much, Greg and Dave. For the rest of you who are still listening, please do join us at BIA Kelsey Now on June 12th in San Francisco. You can save $100 on registration if you use the promo code NOWLIVE, NOWLIVE. Write it down and use it often. We are going to be joined by a stellar group of speakers. Right now on the screen you can see the investors and venture capitalists that we've got participating, including Will Su from Mucker Capital and James Joaquin from the newly funded Obvious Ventures. They raised $123 million, $686,887. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Quite an endorsement of the model that they're undertaking. We're also going to be joined by Exceed Capital and Comcast Ventures. Joanna Lord, the Vice President of Marketing for Porch, will be kicking off the morning with a keynote on the experience and the strategy Porch is going to be pursuing going forward. Ethan Anderson of My Time will be kicking off our afternoon with a short keynote about My Time's model, which is, I think, quite interesting. They only charge for the first time that you connect with a customer, and after that, they focus on the CRM revenue with essentially a $10 a month subscription to keep that engagement with the individual customer going. So there are going to be a lot of different mixes of the solutions and the components of solutions to consider as we concoct new businesses for the local on-demand economy.